Driving through downtown Chicago. Video number 20. Part 4 of 9. Once I cross this bridge, I will be in downtown Chicago. Downtown Chicago is a big area, so I can only show you a small part. Downtown Chicago is also called the Loop. This includes the South Loop, the West Loop, the Loop itself, Millennium Park, and the Lakefront. Plus, there is the Museum Park, which has the Shed Aquarium, the Field Museum, the Adler Planetarium, and the football stadium. Plus, downtown Chicago has the riverfront that goes from east to west and north to south. When I worked in downtown Chicago, I would eat lunch on the riverfront. Downtown Chicago is so big that you had to work next to the riverfront to be able to eat your lunch, or you would never make it back to work on time. It can take over 30 minutes to walk from the west riverfront to the north riverfront. It took me 30 minutes to walk from the train to the office. Millennium Park has the Chicago Bean, and the Art Institute of Chicago. The Art Institute of Chicago is the most visited museum in Chicago, but this is only because it is so close and easy to get to. The most popular museum is the Museum of Science and Industry, which is about 10 miles or 16 kilometers south of downtown. This museum is so popular you now have to make reservations. The Loop itself is mostly office buildings, and since I am driving around on a Saturday afternoon is why you do not see a lot of people. Many of the streets in the Loop is one big giant bridge. I will show you what I mean. Since I am in the Loop, let me tell you about America's working culture. In many Asian countries, they work 6 days a week. In the United States and Western European countries, we only work 5 days a week, and only for 8 hours a day. In the Philippines, some companies will not pay you for a month. It is not that they delay your first paycheck for a month. It means you work for free for 1 month before you start earning money. In the United States, if you work, then they have to pay you. There is no working for a day, a week, or a month for no pay. Plus, in countries such as Japan and Korea, many employees cannot leave work and go home until the boss or their manager goes home. One Korean YouTube creator said that she had to get a real job because YouTube was not paying enough. She said that some of the newer companies in Korea are progressive because these companies allow their employees to leave work when their work is completed. Working in Korea and Japan is so brutal that both countries have a saying about dying at work, and some people in Korea and Japan do die at work. In Korea and Japan, most employees work 10 to 12-hour days, 6 days a week. Most men in Korea and Japan leave for work before their children wake up for school, and get home from work after their children are asleep. One YouTube creator said that it is common to see men in Japan falling asleep on the train on the way home from work. In Vietnam, most of the country closes during lunch because it is common for people to take a nap during lunchtime. In some Western European countries, it is illegal for a company to call you at home. In France, one man said that when he got injured, the law said that he did not have to come back to work until he was fully physically and emotionally recovered. Within 6 weeks, he was fully physically recovered, but he took an additional 4 months to become fully emotionally recovered. During these 5 months, he was being paid. All of the Western European countries have child care paid for by their government. This means that if you are a parent with a young child and have to work, then the government will pay to have someone look after your child while you are working. This brings me to my country, the United States of America. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a federal law that said that both men and women had the right to take 4 weeks off from work when their child is born. I have a friend who is named Ray. Ray took 4 weeks off from work when he had his children, and then Ray's wife took 4 weeks. However, unless you were on salary, these 4 weeks are unpaid. The liberals have been attempting to reinstate this law, and add to the law that child care will be paid for by the government. The conservatives have been doing everything they can to stop it. One of the reasons the conservatives use to stop these kinds of laws is to say that it will cost too much money. The United States is the richest country in the world, and this is because the majority of the top Fortune 1000 companies' headquarters are located in the United States. If all of the Western European countries can afford it, then the United States should have no problems affording the same social programs as the Western European countries. The country of Iceland has no major corporations, and they have the best social programs. Plus, Iceland has one of the strongest economies in the world. In fact, Iceland's social programs are so good that women do not need a man for anything. Because of Iceland's social programs, men want to get married, but many women do not. So, what many women do is keep getting a new boyfriend every 5 to 7 years. This has resulted in Iceland having to create an app to let you know if you are related to the person before you sleep with them. The government of Iceland is mainly run by liberal women. Another reason the conservatives use to stop the increase of social programs is to say that your taxes will increase. Yes, some of these countries do pay more in personal taxes compared to the United States, but the majority of these countries pay about the same in personal taxes as the United States. In other countries, the majority of social programs are paid through business taxes, which have not hurt their economy or reduced job growth. Plus, look at what they get for the money. The people in these countries get free child care, free health care, free education that includes college, more sick time, more vacation time, family leave time, and free elderly care for grandparents. The United States has what is called right-to-work states, such as Arizona, Texas, and many states in the South. I tell people to avoid working in these states because employees have no rights. In a right-to-work state, an employer or company can fire or let you go at any time and for any reason. In fact, companies do not have to provide a reason. This means that if it is a hostile work environment, there is nothing you can do. You can have them on video calling you the N-word, and there is nothing you can do. Let me give a few examples of what these right-to-work laws really mean. My friend Mike works nights at Walmart in Arizona. If Mike works more than 8 hours on a holiday, then Mike should get overtime pay. If Mike starts work at 1 in the morning, then Walmart will require him to clock into work at 11 o'clock the night before. Since Mike clocked in the day before, even if most of the time he worked was during the holiday, Mike does not get any overtime pay. The state of Illinois is not a right-to-work state. This means that if you clocked in for work at 11 o'clock the night before, you will get overtime pay. In Arizona, companies such as Walmart can require you to work overtime, and then require you to kill the overtime the next day. To kill the overtime, you will have to take a longer lunch the next day, which means that your working day went from an 8-hour day to a 10-hour day. This means that if you have an appointment the next day, like seeing a doctor or having school, you might not be able to do it. In Illinois, a company cannot require you to work overtime. After 8 hours, when it is time to go home, then you go home. Remember the 1980s movie called 9 to 5? Back in the 70s and the 80s, people worked from 9 to 5. People worked 8 hours and got paid for lunch. Now people work 9 to 6 and do not get paid for lunch. Back in the 70s and the 80s, if you worked more than 8 hours in a day, then you got time and a half. This means that if you got paid $4 an hour, the overtime pay would be $6 an hour. Plus, if you worked more than 40 hours in a week or worked a holiday, then you would get double time. This means that the $4 an hour would increase to $8 an hour. Over the decades, because liberals do not come out to vote, conservatives have been taking away our protection and benefits. Another example is the gun laws. Back in the 70s and the 80s, there were no mass gun shootings at our schools. Back then, the federal gun laws were strict. Yes, there were mass shootings in states where the gun laws were not strict, such as Texas. In the states where the laws were not strict, because of crazy post office employees, which is where the saying of going postal came from, you had men going into fast food restaurants conducting mass shootings. However, where gun laws were strict, there were no mass shootings. Plus, back in the 70s and the 80s, the federal laws made it difficult to buy a gun in one state and bring it to another state. Now you can buy a gun over the internet. Plus, you can buy a gun at a gun show and legally bring the gun to another state. Gun shows and the internet require no background checks. So criminals and people with a mental illness can buy as many guns as they like at a gun show, and sell them in another state. Plus, back in the 70s, since it was difficult for a person to buy a gun in one state and bring the gun to another state, resulted in some people making handmade guns. Thus, there was a handmade gun in Chicago called the Saturday Night Special. This gun was so bad that the government told people that if the person holding the gun was 5 feet or 1.5 meters from you, to stand still because then you had a 90% chance that you would not be hit by the bullet. However, if you moved, then you had a 50% chance that you would be hit by the bullet. Now you know that liberals have been attempting to provide more protections and increase our benefits, and the conservatives have been doing everything they can to stop it. Conservatives have always framed the argument as freedom and rights. The real argument is about protection in regards to guns, education, employment, women, race, and LGBTQ. Thus, the real argument is not about freedom or rights. Conservatives do not like immigration. Because most immigrants are running away from violence, most immigrants like protection, and thus are mostly liberals. Click subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and share this video.